Hi, friends. My name is Trisha Roberts. It's been a little while since I've had the time to do something about a few issues that have been on my mind lately, and so I thought I'd take this opportunity while I could to just talk about a few issues. So the first one I wanted to talk about, as you know, as you've seen by the first image I showed, any dictator would admire the uniformity and obedience of the US media. I was just watching the Jimmy Dore show tonight, and he was talking about how the MSNBC and Chris Hayes, MSNBC has hardly even mentioned Yemen at all over the last year, and there's a genocide happening in Yemen. And it's directly participated in by the US, and it's a Saudi basically bombing campaign of all the infrastructure and hospitals, etc., in Yemen, and it's been going on for at least 2 years, and the US has been participating in that directly. And there's been not a peep from the mainstream media about this, really. Until just recently, with Chris Hayes giving about 2 minutes worth about this issue. It's a pretty horrific thing that basically the mainstream media doesn't, and isn't surprising, of course, that the mainstream media is only interested in ratings, and they really just turn out to be a spokespiece for the government. The government, of course, is an imperialist warmongering empire. So anyway, that's I'll show you this. This is the image of a bus that was bombed, and it had school children in it. So that's the school bus that was bombed, and there was 56 school children who were all murdered by the US and Saudi campaign that's going on there and has been for a long time. And, as you can see, it's completely destroyed. But this is ongoing. There have been many, there's one child dying every 10 minutes in Yemen from disease and war and famine. And it's all caused by the Saudis, backed completely by the US and participated indirectly by the US on the ground, in the air. And that's something that the mainstream media only really just tonight, MSNBC decided to do a 2-minute piece on it. No arms flailing in the air, and back to Russia, the whole Russiagate thing. So anyway, that's what we have at the present time, is mainstream media, which Goebbels would be proud of. So I won't spend too much more time on Yemen, but if you haven't protested against this horrific genocide taking place right now in Yemen, I implore you to do so. So I'll just show you a couple of other images that you might find interesting. Let's see. There was something by Lee Camp. Lee Camp hosts the show Redacted Tonight, and he said CNN, this is on the 29th of July, CNN just hosted a panel on whether the US should topple Iran and what regime should replace it. Every segment like this presupposes it's okay and right for the US to destroy other countries and millions of lives at our whim. These commentators are true sociopaths. So that's that's a very sort of honest take on the mainstream media. And imagine if, say, another country was sitting around and talking about how they were going to invade other countries and topple their elected governments, which the US has been doing ever since at least 1946. And since 1946 to 2000, it's interfered and meddled, sometimes successfully toppling governments, but about 81 in between 2000, at 1946 and 2000, and it's been ongoing ever since. And they've even talked recently about invading Venezuela. They're putting incredible sanctions on Venezuela so that they can, and they've been funding the opposition so that they can overtake Venezuela and take over their nationalized oil. I mean, that's what it's all about, imperialism. And the reason I want to talk about a little bit about, if I may, Ocasio-Cortez, the Democratic Socialist who is running in New York State, and there's been a lot of various faux left people complaining about her. I just wanted to quickly mention that she understands MMT, which is modern monetary theory, and and that's a very important thing for all of us to understand. It's basically that the US is monetarily sovereign, and that means that it cannot go broke, and that means that and it also means that federal taxes do not fund spending. So Ocasio-Cortez understands MMT, and when she talks about when people ask her how she's going to pay for it, I hope that she talks about MMT. She may not actually call it MMT, but hopefully she doesn't talk about taxes funding spending, because it doesn't require taxes funding the rich, taxes on the rich to fund Medicare for all. It doesn't require that at all. So that's something that we all need to understand. And I invite you to join the Real Progressives on Facebook. That's at Real, R-E-A-L, Progressive on Facebook. That's Progressive Singular, to find out what MMT is, because anybody who calls themselves a progressive should really understand this issue of MMT, so that we can all hold politicians' feet to the fire. And when they say, oh, we need to raise taxes on the rich to fund Medicare for all or any of those other services that we all deserve, public health, public education, fixing infrastructure, and elimination of student debt, all those various things, we need to understand MMT so we can say to them, well, you don't need to tax the rich, even though, of course, taxing the rich is very important for other reasons, but not for the reasons we think it is. Taxing the rich is important. We don't need to tax the rich to get free health care. So anyone that lives in a sovereign country that issues its own currency, like Australia, Canada, the UK, the USA, and the like, that is something that we all need to understand, MMT. So Ocasio-Cortez, she understands this issue, and so hopefully she won't be sort of mincing her words when she talks about how we're going to pay for it. And anybody from the Green Party should really understand this issue about how are we going to pay for it. If you can't answer that question, then the faux liberals, the neoliberals and the neocons are going to run circles around you. They're going to say that you're full of nonsense. And that's why modern monetary theory, which is not a theory, by the way, it's just simply a description of the operational reality of the economy. If you don't understand that issue, you're not going to be able to address this. You're not going to be able to answer how you're going to pay for it. And that's something that the Green Party always seems to have a problem with. Unfortunately, the Jill Stein, and that they don't seem to be that interested in this issue, and it's a vital issue if you're a progressive and you want to be able to answer that question, how are you going to pay for it? And that will also address other issues like if you look up federal job guarantee, that's also associated with MMT, and we can also end the poverty draft with an understanding of this issue. Understanding this issue is very, very important. So I won't say much more from that. I just invite you to go along to Real Progressives on Facebook and check out what that issue is about. It's vitally important for everybody who calls themselves a progressive, and also anybody who is disturbed by the poverty draft. So you might have, I'm sure everybody by now has probably heard about Alex Jones and InfoWars, and how Alex Jones, who has a rather unfortunate channel and social media platform, InfoWars. I'm not going to go into much about InfoWars, just to say that it promotes transphobia. It promotes violence against the left. It reinforces a whole lot of really out there conspiracy theories. And anyway, you'll probably know. You probably already know about it. Anyway, so this is a problem when social media platforms like Facebook and YouTube, which are monopolies, and as Jimmy Dore calls it, Jimmy Dore, if you haven't checked out his show, it's on YouTube. Jimmy Dore was talking about how basically it's like the town square, these social media platforms. There is no real alternative to Facebook or YouTube. And so you're kind of like, you either go there and you do, sort of whatever education you want to do, and social justice issues, or there's really nothing different from that, an alternative. So when they shut down someone, even if it's speech that you really hate, even if you completely disagree with Alex Jones, which I do, and I hope that anybody who is on the left would, the fact is that if they really what these large social media platforms are doing, they're actually coming for the left, and they're using him as an excuse. He's the start, and they will keep going. They'll knock off things like the Black Agenda Report and the Empire Files and the Jimmy Dore Show and all these different ones. The Real News Network, anything they can say they're Russian, Russian, who knows, they blame it on Putin or something, Putin platforms or whatever. They can use any excuse they want, and they can call it hate speech even if they want. I mean, they say they shut down Alex Jones because of hate speech, but really, and yes, he does promote hate speech against different minority groups for sure, but that's not really the reason why they've shut him down. It's just a sort of a little appetizer into what they're going to do to the left. So they're coming for you, and if you think, oh, good, Alex Jones is gone, well, he hasn't gone. He's actually more popular now. He's gotten at least 5-point-something million new subscribers in the remaining platforms he has left, or if I think it's through an app on the phone or whatever. He's actually getting more people watching his shows now. But still, he's still been taken off those major platforms. Basically, they deleted his business, and he had a lot. I think he's had millions of subscribers, I think, or at least millions of viewers. So, you might hate that sort of speech, for sure. And it's, and the promotion of sort of alt-right fascist principles and whatever. But, the fact is that when you start doing that to people, where does it end? When are they going to make up some excuse, these large social media platforms? When are they going to make up an excuse to get rid of, your favorite left news source? And there's so few real news sources now that are independent. So, that's something that we all need to think about. It's something that we should not be clapping our hands about and being happy that this is happening, because eventually it's going to come around to you. And just remember that Facebook has been getting rid of social media pages that are Palestinian, that's Palestinian rights pages. They also are being now sort of advised and controlled by the Atlantic Council, which is basically an imperialist warmongering think tank. So, you know, this is the sort of social media, Facebook is the sort of social media platform which is being instructed by a neocon think tank, which is, you know, is sort of supported by arms industries or whatever. And that's the sort of, that's, you know, can you imagine them being okay, Facebook being okay with, if they can get away with banning, you know, left groups that are anti-imperialist? Do you think that they're going to pass on that? I don't think so. So, you know, that's something that we really need to think very seriously about and do something about it. You know, not just sort of put sad little emoticons on things as though, you know, but actually speak out against this, because this censorship is coming for you. So I'm not in favor of banning Alex Jones as much as I think his platform has lots of very, very, very unfortunate and hateful ideas in it, which is I'm sad that he feels that that's how he wants to make his money. But, you know, that's how it is. But it's not okay that that this is going on, and we need to be sort of doing our best against it. As Jimmy Dore said, he said, the antidote to bad speech isn't censorship. The antidote to bad speech is more speech, not less. If you don't like what Alex Jones has to say, then set up a Facebook page to call it Debunking Alex Jones. Censorship always backfires and has a myriad of unintended consequences. And I think there was one other person had something to say about that. Let me see. Oh, and I thought I might share this rather nice image about capitalism, which I think's rather good. Capitalism has outlived its usefulness. Well, that's for sure. And that's, you know, sort of something that we must remember, that capitalism and imperialism are inextricably linked. And, you know, particularly at this end stage where capitalism is just subsuming everything, and it needs imperialist wars to do that. And that's what the US empire is trying to do with its 1,000 bases around the world and its 8+ wars, and interfering in, now meddling in Africa and meddling in and continuing to meddle in the Latin American countries, trying to destabilize governments with sanctions so they can overthrow them or cripple them to the point, and so that the public become discontented and go for the opposition, which is always usually funded by the US empire. So, you know, this is where we are today. We're in a very dangerous position in relation to the US, and how dangerous in it's falling as an empire, and as it falls, it's becoming very, very, it's flailing about and basically trying to obtain full spectrum dominance by any means necessary, and I mean any means necessary. And one more thing about capitalism, which this is something that you need to consider when you're buying things off online. The amount Jeff Bezos, head of Amazon, made this year per second was $2,950 US dollars a second. It's more than the annual salary of an Amazon worker in India, which is $2,796. And most of his employees are on food stamps. I mean, this is capitalism. And this is eventually, you know, and he's basically, apparently he would need to spend $28 million a day just to not make any more money on his $100 billion plus dollars that he has already. That's what he would need to spend every day, not to get richer. That's capitalism. That's unfettered capitalism, and that's why it's so important that we not only understand MMT, but start to look into socialist Socialism, basically. There's a good little hashtag which I like to. It's try socialism. I think that's something that we need to think about seriously, because capitalism is not working. It's never really worked, and basically the whole idea of capitalism is to keep. Sorry, I've got a little cat coming to visit me. She's stepping on things. Um, the whole idea of capitalism is to continue to subsume everything, to continue to eat up everything and eat up the planet, basically, and it will end in extinction, and it may already be at that point where imminent human extinction is on the horizon, um, and that's capitalism. So it's not working. It hasn't worked. There's no such thing as the trickle down effect. So we really have to, neoliberalism is just a cancer that's been plaguing us since the late 70s. 40 years of neoliberalism is just been appalling for everybody. I can see it's helped destroy some of the wonderful things about Australia with free. We used to have free healthcare in the 70s and 80s, and even though to a degree it's still free, but it's death by 1,000 cuts. They're just whittling away at it, trying to make the public services dysfunctional, so that people can so that then they can say, well, public services aren't working. We have to privatize things in this current liberal government full of neoconservatives. They're basically, the LNP in Australia is basically trying to privatize everything. And that's what neoliberalism has brought us. Basically, they won't be happy until we have no public free healthcare left in Australia. And they want to privatize all other services. So they want to turn us into a mini United States. That's something we have to really, sort of push against. Now, the little cat that's just come to visit me, she almost took out one of my talking points, so I have to quickly look here. So anyway, there's something else that I wanted to talk about. I'm not going to talk too much longer. There's just a couple of other things I wanted to speak about. The one is, if you haven't spoken out for Julian Assange yet, doesn't matter what you think of Julian Assange, whether you like him or you don't like him, that's irrelevant. This is about free press. Julian Assange is associated with WikiLeaks, of course, and has brought some very, very important information to us, particularly about when Chelsea Manning leaked to was the famous whistleblower. She released the what is now called collateral murder video of journalists and civilians being mowed down by I think it was an Apache helicopter, and it was a really dreadful video, and basically that happens pretty much every day during these wars. And she was thrown in prison for 7 years, but it was supposed to be 35. Well, that is something that WikiLeaks and Julian Assange helped bring to the public, a very, very important issue that needed to be brought to the public. And that's just one of many, 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 many things that sort of leaks that WikiLeaks has helped bring to us. And one of the reasons Hillary Clinton is so angry, and one of the reasons that Russiagate, this constant Russia thing, the anti-Russian propaganda, is because when WikiLeaks released the Podesta emails, which is Hillary Clinton's campaign manager, John Podesta, when they released those emails, we saw the corruption of Hillary Clinton. If we weren't sure about her corruption, we were after that. And of course, she was one of the people that her campaign elevated Donald Trump, intentionally elevated Donald Trump, because they thought that Hillary Clinton would win against Donald Trump. So that she helped bring us Donald Trump. And we wouldn't have found that out and all the other things that she has been up to if it hadn't been for WikiLeaks. And that's why the US empire hates, one of the reasons US empire hates WikiLeaks so much and Julian Assange is because they have embarrassed empire and help expose empire. And this is crucial for democracy. You know, if we want a democracy, we have to have a fourth estate. We have to have a functional fourth estate which which holds government's feet to the fire, which basically exposes the crimes of the corruption of government. And we don't have that anymore. The US mainstream, corporate-owned mainstream media is useless. Well, they're worse than useless. They're dangerous because they hide the crimes of government, they hide the corruption, and now corruption is just in plain sight. Obama, a lot of Obama's cabinet are raking it in, working for Wall Street and the arms industry. They're raking it in, including Obama. Obama's raking it in. They don't even care anymore. Trump, of course, is just corruption on two legs. I mean, he's always been corrupt and he's always been doing messy things. But I mean, I don't talk really about these particular front puppets because they're just front puppets. Empire is empire and it just keeps rolling along with its imperialist warmongering and its corruption and lining their pockets. So I don't tend to talk about specific people unless that are in the, pretend driver's seat because, empire just continues on and it doesn't matter which side of the US, doesn't matter which party, Democrats or GOP are in the driver's seat. They both have similar aims, which is to line their own pockets and to continue to continue imperialist wars for resources and hegemony. I've lost my train of thought now, but anyway, Julian Assange and, WikiLeaks have helped bring a lot of these crimes of empire to light, and that's why they are so vilified, and that's why Julian Assange, if he leaves the embassy, which they're trying to oust him, the current Ecuadorian president, Lenin Moreno, he basically has recently sold a bunch of oil, I think, to the US, and he's that's right, and he's basically just being a puppet of the US, and now he's hoping, I think, to hand over Julian Assange to the US, even though he says that he doesn't want him extradited or whatever, but I wouldn't believe him. And of course, anybody who makes any promises to Julian Assange that they're not going to extradite him, I don't think one can believe that, if it's the British government or if it's the Ecuadorian government or if it's the US government, whatever. I think it's really dire for him now. And if he gets extradited to the US when he's pushed out of that embassy, he will end up in some prison and probably tortured or even killed, but we'll never hear from him again. So it's really, really important that we support Julian Assange and WikiLeaks. You may not agree with everything he does. I don't agree with everything that he has some associations on Twitter, which I'm not very fussed about. There's some other things about him, but that isn't important. What is important is that he is a human being who he's also an Australian, and my government's doing nothing to protect him and hasn't for years. It's disgraceful. The foreign, Penny Wong, who's one of the politicians that's supposed to be speaking out for him, has done nothing. She's on the opposition side. She said nothing, and when I rang up to find out why there's been nothing from the opposition about Julian Assange, the receptionist said Senator Penny Wong can decide who she talks about and who she doesn't talk about. So basically, they've abandoned an Australian citizen in my country. My government has completely abandoned an Australian citizen, all because he committed the crime, in quotes, of journalism. It's a disgrace, absolutely disgraceful, and I'm appalled. So anyway, that's why we need to support Julian Assange, because even though he knows that he's making powerful enemies and he's made powerful enemies, he and Wiki-leaks continue to release information about and expose empire. And he knows that every time they do that, it just another nail into his coffin, basically. And he still does it. So that in itself deserves respect, wouldn't you say? So that's a very important thing. So please support Julian Assange and do what you can. And the last thing I want to talk about is Eyes Left podcast, which is a podcast by Michael Preisner and Spencer Rapone. And if you haven't checked out Eyes Left podcast, I encourage you to do so, because it's truly a very, very important. A very, very important podcast, and it's at soundcloud.com/eyes EYES left LEFT. It's a military. It's for the military, but it's for the general public. And it's basically two, one is an Iraqi veteran, Michael Preisner, and the other one is Spencer Rapone, who is an Afghanistan veteran. Rapone was a West Point graduate, and Mike Preisner, who is also producer and writer for the Empire Files, with Abby Martin. He was a corporal in the Iraq War, and he signed up for the military before the war, before 9/11, and then it went all crazy after 9/11, and vilification of Muslims and Iraqis, all sorts of, it was basically it was just awful, what he said, what happened after 9/11. And basically in this Eyes Left podcast, they talk about details about what happens, currently in Afghanistan and in Iraq. They encourage military to speak out to them, and to question what they're participating in. And it's really, really a great podcast and so important. It's very unique. So I really encourage people to please check out Eyes Left podcast. I didn't probably do a very good explanation of it. They also talk about socialism, because they're both socialists. And but it's the debut podcast, which was about 2 weeks ago, week and a half ago, is really great. And so please check it out, and please share it with others, particularly those in the military or veterans, because the more support and the more the military get to see this, hopefully the ones that are questioning what they're doing in Iraq and Afghanistan and elsewhere, if they question that, they will get support from these two people and from people associated with them to help them leave, to help them resist these immoral wars. So, you could, by sharing this Eyes Left podcast, you can help saving not only the lives of those soldiers that are currently serving in the military and who are expected to engage in these constant moral acts. I mean, war is immoral, but the various things that they have to do is just appalling. And so you're helping them, but and equally as importantly, or more importantly, really, is that you're hopefully preventing other people from joining, and also hopefully, if these particular military people who are questioning, if they leave, well, that's just less people who are killing and murdering and who are just basically, torturing and murdering people. It prevents further torture and murder from happening. So this is a really, really great thing. So that's why I consider Eyes Left podcast to be incredibly important, a very unique voice. And I do hope that when Mike Preisner has some spare time, he's very busy with various things, but when he has some spare time, I hope to be doing an interview with him on my page, The Naked Empire. But I share everything on Faint Signals from Vega anyway, so you can see it there, or on my specific page, The Naked Empire. So hopefully, fingers crossed, I'll be able to interview Mike Preisner about this very excellent podcast, Eyes Left. So really, that's all I wanted to say. And I didn't expect, I was actually only doing this, I actually put it on private so that no one could see this, so I could just record using BeLive and be able to put shots of various images up. But it looks like I have an audience anyway, so it doesn't matter. It was supposed to be private, but it looks like I might have an audience. But so anyway, thank you so much for watching. Please check out my Vegan Trove at Vegan Trove, VEGANTROVE on YouTube. And please, if you want to subscribe, please click the little notifications bell. There's a little bell there beside the subscribe button. Please click that, because otherwise you won't get notifications when there is an upload or a live stream. I hope to do live streams. I guess you could call this a live stream, even though it's supposed to be private, but it looks like it isn't. But I hope to do more live streams in the future. I've just been very busy with various things. I've got a few things happening offline, campaigns in relation to LGBTI issues, and also some other things. I'm spread a little bit thin at the moment with some other campaigns that I'm engaged in. So I've been wanting to do more vlogs and live streams, but it just hasn't, the time and the space hasn't availed itself. But hopefully that will change soon. So anyway, thanks so much for watching. My name's Trisha Roberts. You're watching Faint Signals from Vega. Till next time. Bye for now.